First of all, let me start off by saying I'm not a self-help guru. I never claimed to be a self-help guru. Instead, what I like to say I am, if you want to put a label on it, is a philosopher. I like to discuss ideas and understand ideas. And in fact, I feel like honestly, I've kind of conquered philosophy. Like this will be true for anyone if you come to an understanding of linguistics and logic. If you are sufficiently I guess practiced in either of those, then really there's not much that any philosopher could really possibly say that's going to rock your world, because at the end of the day all that's ever really happening is they're laying out a framework or a set of ideas that describe something about the world in their opinion. And then oftentimes they're either making great allusions or metaphors or telling a story or somehow just elaborating on that. But all it ever comes down to is really just a framework and then some elaboration. And maybe that sounds dumb, but that's literally all philosophy is. It's just ideas. And as long as you have a firm enough grasp on linguistics to be able to communicate those ideas, and as long as you have a firm enough grasp on logic to be able to make the ideas internally consistent and coherent, that's you've done it all. Beyond that, it's really just going to be conjecture and appealing to different pieces of quote unquote. It's either going to be evidence or people's intuition or what have you. Because I mean, the idea can be about anything, right? That's the beautiful thing about philosophy is it's a wide open book. Um, but anyways, all that none of that was relevant except just to say I fancy myself a philosopher. And what I'm doing with this channel is just kind of talking because I feel like I have a valuable perspective, or at least a perspective that has been valuable to myself and to others in my life. And so I would like to share those ideas. I already have a Substack where I do that, but video and YouTube is kind of like the new wave, like the new format of, I guess, media. And I feel like this might be a better way to get those ideas out into the world. With the ultimate goal being just, hopefully it helps some people. Hopefully there are some people that are living their life and then see this video and are like, man, that makes sense. And then like their next day is easier, because they're going through something and they think about whatever idea they got out of it, and it sort of helps them get through their life. Um, and so to actually get into the idea itself, what I wanted to do today was explain my overarching, I guess, image of what life even is and why. And I think this is actually objectively true in a certain sense, depending on how you define those words, of course. I think this is objectively true, though, that life is simple. Doesn't mean it's easy, but it is definitely simple. And I feel like that needs to be said, and so I'm saying it here. And so we're looking at a circle, and now we're actually looking at a circle inside of another circle. And we're going to make this internal circle, it's going to be the black one. And damn, I got to get rid of this external circle. Um, and we're going to make the external circle green. It can have some other colors in there too. Green, black, and we're going to fill it with blue. I felt like paint would be a good um, thing to do this in just because it's it's so I wanted to do it with just a whiteboard, um, but then I don't actually have a good camera setup for that, so I was like, let me just do this in Microsoft Paint. Anyways, what am I trying to say here? All right, the first thing we're gonna say, and this is an absolute truth. No other philosopher in the world is going to be able to get around this one. The only thing you, meaning you listening to this, ever actually interact with is your own inner world. Literally, meaning you are conscious, you are a person, but in some sense, you are trapped in the inner world. The inner world has trapped you, and you're never escaping it. And that's what this black circle represents. It represents your inner world. And the things that are in here are you, um, things you feel, so feelings, ideas you have, thoughts you have, and here's another absolute truth. That's actually all that ever or the feelings, I'm going to put slash sensations, and this is all that ever will be in this inner world is you, your feelings and sensations, your ideas and your thoughts. Now, whether you want to call the feelings, sensations, ideas, and thoughts yours is kind of up to you. And I would actually say you shouldn't really think of them as yours. But we might get into that later. But so in life you're ultimately trapped in the inner world, and the only things that will ever happen, this is absolutely true. And whenever I say that, I want you to think about what that really means when something's absolutely true. It means there are no exceptions. Every single thing that will ever happen in your life that you will ever experience is either going to be your own consciousness, some sort of feeling or sensation, or an idea or a thought. And why did I distinguish ideas and thoughts? Honestly, I don't even know, but it makes sense to me. So there's you. That's whenever you think of you, that's what I'm talking about. Your consciousness, maybe your internal monologue, like your intentions, your just your consciousness, sort of the internal observer, if you will. And your feelings and sensations, these are your emotions. This is sight, sound, hearing, and touching. And then your ideas are like, they're almost like secondary simulations of feelings or sensations. I mean, you know what an idea is. That's what I'm saying. An idea is, it's often abstract, but it's some sort of relation between things, or sort of a conceptual construction of how things relate to each other. Because even though these few categories of just you, your feelings, your senses, your ideas, and your thoughts encompass everything, there are different kinds of feelings, sensations, ideas, and thoughts, right? Because you can feel happy or sad. And so would be an idea is like, when I'm sad, I should go eat some ice cream to feel better. That's an idea, right? It's a connection between a feeling, a sensation, and I forgot to add this one. This is an important one. It's funny I forgot it. And an action. Although, in some sense, your actions are just an actualization of your consciousness and your ideas into feelings and sensations, but whatever. Hopefully, you're getting the picture. In life, the only things you're ever going to literally experience, it's all in some sense kind of in your head. Why is it not literally in your head? Well, that's because there is a connection, particularly with feelings and sensations, between the outside world and your feelings. They don't just come out of thin air. You're only ever interacting with them on the internal world, meaning in your own mind, in your own experience, but they ultimately originate from the external world, right? And this might blow some people's minds. It's actually the same thing with ideas. To some, well, ideas, I don't know if I'll say ideas, but I'm going to say thoughts. And maybe that will explain the difference here. And hopefully you'll see that a lot of the utility of paint here is in it allowing me to draw these arrows, because these arrows are key. They explain the connections that I have between things, and hopefully they will make things make sense. Oh, I don't know what's going on there. Wait, this needs to be black. So the reason that you're not literally trapped in your head, or even though you're literally trapped in your head, the reason that this doesn't mean that, like, oh, nothing matters or something like that, is because what's in your head is still connected to the outer world, right? Outer world. And we're going to make this like bold and really big. Yeah, okay. And blue, because the world is mostly water. So the reason, so we're starting to get a picture here. You are stuck here in your internal world, but it is somewhat connected to the external world, and there are actually some internal connections between things in your internal world. All right? Or I was going to draw a bunch of arrows, but just know that you can see everything in your inner world, but you can't actually see out into the outer world. Think of it as this black impenetrable wall, but you can see everything in the internal world. And this arrow between you and your ideas, that's articulating the fact that your consciousness, you, whenever you think of me, that can actually form ideas, and it can form thoughts, and it can perform actions. And these are the things that you, to some degree, have control over. And so we're going to highlight those. We're going to put a yellow box around them because that's very important. Because, spoiler alert, I'm basically going to be explaining a brand of stoicism, or maybe, I don't know if it's a brand of stoicism or if it's the underlying indisputable truths that underlie stoicism, that which are why life is ultimately a simple game. Even if it's not an easy game, it's still a simple game. So you are trapped in the inner world, and you can see everything in the inner world, and you actually have some control over, you have some causal power over your ideas and your thoughts and your actions. And then the external world is coming in and influencing and or causing some of your feelings and pretty much all of your feelings and sensations, and even some of your thoughts. And in some smaller ways, your actions, because of like uh reflexes, that's sort of an external thing where it just happens and you did not consciously have any control over it, and some of your ideas. Depending on how you want to define these things, they can actually all be in some way caused by the external world, but you, meaning your consciousness, you, the you in your head, also has control and influence over them. And they, in turn, link back to, connect to, and influence your feelings and sensations. And sometimes your feelings and sensations, and here's the thing about philosophy, a lot of it is how you want to define things. So I'm not going to, the connections aren't all going to be absolute. And whenever I say something's absolute, that doesn't mean that whatever you think I'm saying is absolute. It means that I'm trying to articulate something that is absolute. And whether I'm actually getting to the heart of it is obviously up for debate. But, anyways, this is your entire life. There's the inner world, which is completely known to you, comprised of feelings, sensations, ideas, thoughts, and actions. And there's the outer world, which is ultimately, I don't know what color is going to best represent this. It's ultimately a mystery. I'm putting it gray as if it's a cloud. You know, mist, a spooky. It's a place that you ultimately can't know, like, the absolute truth about it. I think that it's obvious that you actually can learn a lot about the outer world, but at a fundamental level, you kind of can't, because it could always be the case that you're just like hallucinating or like in a coma or in the Matrix or something, right? And as long as you understand that, then you'll get what I mean by it's fundamentally a mystery. Like, I don't think the outer world is necessarily all that mysterious in practice, but it's fundamentally unknown. Or rather, maybe not unknown, it's fundamentally inaccessible. Anyways, back to the inner world. And this is the most important, these are some of the most important connections. Actions connect. So the outer world is connected to the inner world via ideas, thoughts, actions, and feelings. But or the inner world is connected to the outer world, meaning the outer world influences the inner world via sensations, ideas, thoughts, and actions. And ideas, thoughts, or actually, mm, yeah, you know what? I'm just going to have only the one arrow. But actions connect to the outer world. Because the only thing that we can say for sure is in the outer world is events. And actions are a connection between the inner world to events in the outer world. Events that are ultimately your actions, right? The event of you doing something. And this is kind of hard to see. So I'm actually going to do some oh, I don't, okay. I'm gonna do some erasing, clear up some space. for events. And you don't need to worry too much about the particulars of the outer world, at least for now, for this video. All you need to know is that there's stuff in it. There are events. And now the reason life is simple is because there are, all right, here we're going to get to another picture. It's actually going to be a table. Um, but anyways, we're going to get into a table because in life, so out of this whole picture, this is what your life is composed of, the inner world and the outer world and the connections between them and within them. In life, and so I probably should have said this earlier. The reason that I say life is simple is because the fundamental, or I don't actually, maybe I don't even mean life is simple. I mean finding peace is simple and finding contentment. And so maybe it's winning at life is simple. Maybe that's what I really mean. And the reason it's simple is because it ultimately boils down to two things. Or rather, the fact that all things in both the inner and outer world can be lumped into two categories: problems, not problems. And you could use a different word for this, but as some subtext to further lay it out, I'm just going to say things you aren't satisfied, content, or at peace with, and then things you are satisfied, content, and at peace with. And remember, this is finding peace and contentment in life is simple. And this is why. And this is true of any adjective at all. Everything either is or is not that adjective. Or actually this isn't true of all adjectives, but any, or actually no, this is true of all adjectives. They either are that adjective, so something either is red or it isn't red, or it could technically be like somewhat red, right? Like if we wanted to be very technical, then in reality, these are not two clean categories, but it's actually like a spectrum where, you know, in the middle, it's going to be what? Gray. People love to talk about the gray area. And towards the problem end, it's going to be much more black. And towards the not problem end, it's going to be much more white. And then you're going to have some lighter gray. You get the idea, but there are only two whenever as it relates to you being at peace with life, you're either at peace with something or you are not at peace with it, or you have only partially come to peace with it, right? So you know what? Let's scrap all this cuz that's a good enough distinction that I should just like make it. Um, so there are actually three categories, but this third one is just here for completeness sake. And it's really just, it may as well be, actually, I'm stupid. We don't need this third category. Because it's something is either a problem or it's not a problem or it's somewhat a problem. And anything that's somewhat a problem, we're just gonna go ahead and say that that counts as being a problem. All right. Hopefully you're tracking. Anything that is somewhat a problem, we're just gonna count as definitely a problem. And here's the thing, you might have even seen a matrix of this sort before, and lucky for me, this extra table side over here is actually going to be useful. Of problems, you either can do something, it is either actionable, or, I gotta make this bigger and bolder. It either is actionable or it isn't actionable. And even though I'm using the word actionable, what I mean is it either can can be consciously influenced via thoughts, ideas, and or actions, or it cannot, can't be consciously influenced via thoughts, ideas, and or actions. And so literally everything in life falls into this matrix. And this is the beautiful thing about the matrix, is that it kind of makes things, it kind of reveals why life is simple at a fundamental level, but why obviously it's still hard. If it's actionable and it's not a problem, just celebrate. No issue here, right? You are at peace with it. If it's actionable and it is a problem, do something. Act. Act so as to make it not a problem or less of a problem. And if it isn't actionable, and this is where, if it isn't an actionable and it's not a problem, you're at peace. Or actually, I'm going to write that here too. You're at peace. And if it isn't actionable and it is a problem, then you have to accept it and make your peace with it. And now, obviously, that's easier said than done. But as you will see, if you follow the flowchart is only ever one step. And it's only ever a step towards something not being a problem. So, no matter what in life, even if life might seem really complicated, all that it's ever going to boil down to is that one of these things in the internal world is something that you have a problem with. and then you're just going to need to do something, or just accept that this is the way it is. And in this manner, you can literally never have a problem that you cannot at least start to overcome. And you can always have hope, because even if it's a problem, if you can do something about it, then you know you can do something about it. And if you can't, then you know that you can work to accept it and to make your peace with it. And in fact, this framework reveals what I like to call the only problems that I still have in my life, which I'm going to call meta problems. And meta problems, problems where you don't quite know if you can do something about it, or if you can accept it. Another way to phrase this is true problems, because they're problems that you can't immediately just think about for like 5 seconds and have a great deal of hope for. Because if it's unclear that whether you can do, remember, these are all absolutes, and that's the blessing and the curse of it. You can always either do something, you can always either do something or not do something, and therefore you can always try to accept it or do something about it, but that's all you ever can do. So if it looks like it might be hard to accept something or to do something about a problem, then all of a sudden that's pretty serious. And so I don't know, hopefully this explains a lot of things. Because all you got to know is life is, it's never that complicated, right? It's always just going to be something about your life. And now remember, ideas, something that is included in here, and this will probably make this make more sense for people that are like confused or think this is dumb. What something that is a thought is what you think about the outer world, right? So like most problems are just things you think about the outer world, right? Like, oh, something like your boyfriend or your girlfriend cheated on you. The problem is, from your eyes, that, oh, in the outer world, there's this event, got cheated on, right? But here's the thing, that is not actually something you have access to. So the real problem is just you don't like the fact that, as far as you can tell, out there in the world, it's true that there is an event that you got cheated on. And that's why, like, if your boyfriend or girlfriend comes to you and they're like, "Oh, actually that was a misunderstanding," and they explain it to you, suddenly you don't have a problem. Because remember, the true problem is just, it's always something on the inner world. And this gets to the foundations of Buddhism, because Buddhism is kind of the idea of, what if we just went all in on this option and just accepted everything? Like we're going to really heavily understand that it's all in our head anyways, and so we're just going to accept it no matter what, and then we're just going to be at peace and literally reach nirvana. Which is, it's not necessarily a bad idea. I think there are better ideas, of course. Otherwise, I would be a Buddhist, but there's a lot of merit to that idea. And so I guess the real message of this video is always have hope, because no matter what in life, there is a way forward. This is the problem is not greater than you are, and it is not impossible to, at the very least, understand, or at the very least to try to overcome. And the thing that I truly believe about life is that I think that you always can do something, or you always can accept it. This is just we're gonna call this just one of Will's truisms. Nothing is ever actually unsolvable or completely impossible to come to peace with. Because remember, all it's ever going to be is a feeling, a sensation, an idea, a thought, or an action that you don't like. You're not satisfied with it. Maybe you're feeling sad and you're not satisfied with that. Oh, well, what can you do about it? And things they might seem very complicated, but you always got to boil it down to basics, because the basics are you're dealing with feelings, ideas, thoughts, and actions. And you're either going to like those or you're not going to like those. And you yourself are going to be able to use ideas, thoughts, and actions to try to influence the outside world and your internal world to try to change whatever it is that you have a problem with. And in fact, see, ideas and thoughts are normally, I think this would be useful to add. This is going to be a lot of ideas and thoughts primarily, and then actions secondarily. Like maybe in action you need to accept something is like talk to somebody about it, and that gets you to a point where you can make peace with something. And then this is going to be mostly actions that you are doing, but then but there might be ideas and thoughts that are related. Like, for example, maybe like, because the ideas and the thoughts can sort of inform the actions, give the architecture for the actions, provide context, and make them more effective, right? And so, just in life, you can always boil it down to, all right, am I thinking about this the right way? Or, what can I do about this? And you can do that. I'm telling you, if you do that with every problem you have, you'll make it. Like, you can find peace, you can find contentment, because even though the world is a mystery, this is another good takeaway. Even though the world is a mystery, it is not chaos. And you got to remember that. Even though the world is a mystery, it is not chaos. Or rather, it is not pure chaos. Meaning that as you go about life, you are going to build your own little internal model of the world, which is going to help things make sense. You're going to learn things and you're going to do things that are going to help, or they're going to not help. And then you're going to be like, wow, that makes sense. And you're going to start to form connections and it's going to be where you're building. That's what I'm drawing right here. So this is your model of the internal world. You're going to build this model of, sorry, your model of the outer world. You're going to build this model of the outer world that you're then going to use to make your actions more effective and your ideas and your thoughts more effective. And I'm telling you, that's all it takes to make your peace with life. You, and this is the first step, is understanding that everything always boils down to some experience you are having. That's what this inner world is, this inner world of your experience. And then you can either, you're going to think, you're going to observe that as you, as your conscious self, and then you're going to think about it, and maybe you can do something about it, which is then going to influence this internal experience and also the external world, and then things are going to change. You're going to get feedback. So it's going to be a bit of a feedback loop, right? And this is, I mean, this is why, humans, we have this ability to form this this beautiful loop of try something and okay, I need more arrows here. LOL. Try something, observe the results slash evaluate them, see how things change, and then based off that, you're going to be able to think of something else to do, and then you can go right back, and then you can do it. You can try that thing, and this will get you through everything. And this is just the basics. A lot of, I feel like, my hope is that a lot of people think I'm saying nothing with this video, and that a lot of people also think to themselves, "Wow, he's spitting." And so I think that's it. This is your entire life, the inner world, the outer world, the connections between them, your internal model of the outer world, boiling things down into problems, not problems, stuff you can do about, stuff you can't do about, making peace and doing things, and then the iterative process of making peace and doing things is where you try something, you see how it went, then you think of something else, then you try something. And that's not going to solve your problems, but it's going to boil things down. It's and the problem still might be complex, but it doesn't mean that they're not also simple. Think about sports. Every game, or at least every good game, is simple. Basketball, football, baseball. The game is to score more points or to score more runs. And that's simple, very simple. But obviously, the complexity arrives, and the devil is always, of course, in the details. How do you score the points? How do you make the peace? How do you solve the problems? That's the real problem. Those are the true problems. Is, man, what do I do, or how do I do it, or how do I make peace with it? Those are the true problems. But you're never gonna have just regular old problems anymore, because if it's just a regular old problem, you're just gonna do something about it, or you're gonna make peace with it. And slowly in life, you're gonna get better at these things, and you're gonna slowly become more mature and become more at peace. Anyways, I was yapping. Hopefully you liked the video. Please leave a comment expressing your own viewpoints. I would love to hear them, to hear what you think about these ideas, or to hear any ideas of your own. That's all.